Welcome to NeuroNoodle's Neurofeedback and Neuropsychology podcast featuring tech legend Jay Gunkelman. He's the man who has read well over 500,000 brain scans, and Dr. Marie Swingle, author of iMinds. Our goal is to provide information and promote options for better mental health. The NeuroNoodle podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.
Jay, what is the squash protocol?
This goes back. Goes back a long ways. In the late 90s, Jonathan Cowan had a protocol he called Nurea, which was a generalized suppression frontally. And I was the program manager basically for the then, I think it was SSNR still at that time. The first year I helped was in 97, so this was 1998 in Austin. He asked for an extended period of time on the podium to introduce his new protocol, but he didn't have any data, he just had a new approach. And I had already established a standard for if somebody's on the podium, they have to basically have data and no sales from the podium. And so and he had described his approach to me and actually used the term squash. So when I referred back to his protocol with the term squash, he alleged that I was denigrating it and I was denying him access, and he went behind me as the program manager to the board and asked for time. And they came to me and said, well, can't you give him some time? And I said, well, if you're going to micromanage my running of the event, you run the event. I quit. And they said, no. Anyway, I held my ground with the agreement that they had made that if anybody had data, they could be on the program on the podium, but if they didn't have data, they weren't going to get to the podium. And I told him he could get a booth, and sell from his booth. But he was upset at me. But at the meeting, after Linda Kirk was piped in to the room by David Trudeau with bagpipes, actually piped her in for her presidency onto the stage. The next thing that happened was that she actually pulled a tartan thong out of her cleavage and suggested that if you didn't have anything on under that kilt, this was a professional society and you had to correct that. And she handed him the tartan thong. The audience went crazy. But the next thing was she had an award for Jonathan. He called him up on the stage, and she presented him a peck of Texas squash, which he dumped on the stage and then jumped all over it, kind of like a Gallagher-like, squashing things. People step back and kind of,
Yeah. That's no Susan City.
That's not quite right, So anyway, so the squash protocol was the general suppression frontally, and the term squash was actually generated from the company that had it. And Nurea is still something that's out there. Again, it's a generalized suppression frontally, and also started to do gamma training and saying basically gamma is good. Value judgments should be set aside when you're talking about EEG frequencies. The good and the bad of it. Gamma can be good stuff. It's present when the brain is functioning. Neural networks that form have gamma in them. But it's also present in the seizure focus. It's also present in Alzheimer's. It's also present in Parkinsonism and pain and reward deficiency, and there's thalamocortical dysrhythmia. So gamma is also bad. So training it up isn't always the thing to do. But if you're selling something that trains it up, that's you kind of cherry pick what literature you use, and all the good stuff. Gamma's good. So.
Well, the next one came from Jahan, and he was asking about does caffeine affect an EEG, and then he went into could the theta be related to substantia nigra, like in Parkinson's or other dopamine deficits?
So, kind of step one, caffeine. Caffeine withdrawal increases the slowness of alpha all the way into the theta band if your withdrawal is severe. But that's the withdrawal from caffeine. Caffeine is a stimulant. It tends to have a slight speed up of your background alpha frequency, and it boosts some of the voltages in the beta band. So, caffeine is a stimulant. Withdrawal from it increases theta. And you're picking a specific basal ganglia nuclear body and to talk about theta is it comes from a lot of locations. The basal ganglia in general, if there's a dopamine deficit, you have an increase in theta. You can read about this in Kropotov's first book. He has a very nice book about neurofeedback and QEEG and event-related potentials, and talks about the normal EEG generators and also some of the deviant things like in ADD, the fronto-central theta, that's associated with the dopamine problem. And obviously, if you have fronto-central theta, it's not something where you give amphetamines which speed up alpha. This requires methylphenidate, which is a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. It's a match for the dopamine deficit. The dopamine deficit in the ADD is quite often associated with DAT genetics, dopamine transferase, which is an enzyme that strips away dopamine from the striatum. So you get a dopamine deficit. And again, a dopamine reuptake inhibitor is a match for that.
Why do studies by diagnosis, OCD/PTSD, give mixed results while you organize EEGs by phenotype?
Well, how many kinds of OCD are there in the DSM? As though the DSM has any reality to it at all.
Right,
Right. I mean, it does. It's a reliable dictionary. It'll classify you and give you a name. That's if you go through the process accurately, you get the same name. But that's a dictionary. It's not really an understanding of what's going on. It doesn't have any predictive validity, and that's the trick. So OCD isn't just one kind. A long time ago, Leslie Pritchett and Roy John did a cluster analysis. And a cluster analysis, you say, well, that's one thing. Well, point the cluster analysis at it and say, find two. It will find two. And I guarantee it'll find two because that's what that does. However, the question isn't will it find two, it's is the two it finds of any meaning. You could tell it to find three. And it would. But it looked for, well, why would you look for three when there's only one thing? Split it in two and see what you get. So only if the two pieces mean something is something other than just playing with statistics. So what they found is essentially there was a slow cluster, and about 80% of them didn't respond to the traditional use of an SSRI. Well, that's a medication failure, basically. A placebo gives you a 35% response. So if you're responding 80% of the time, not responding, that's worse than a placebo. And how about the alpha pattern? Well, if it's regular old alpha, usually 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, the regular frequencies that you see in alpha, not really fast alpha, but just regular alpha, you get actually about an 85% positive response to an SSRI, classic Luvox. Fluvoxamine is the classic that would be used. Did you ever see a study that showed that high a response rate for an SSRI? They're usually barely able to beat the placebo. They use a placebo washout design to show efficacy for SSRIs. Everybody in the study gets a placebo. If you respond to the placebo, you're thrown out of the study. Then the people that are left are broken into the placebo, non-responding placebo group and the treatment group, and then the SSRI beats the placebo. But it's a placebo washout design. It's kind of like, well, you play pool. Have you ever played it with a tilted table? Everything goes into the corner pocket. Well, that's like the placebo washout design. You're guaranteed. You're going to beat placebo if you throw out all the placebo responders. Anyway, this showed an 85% positive response to an SSRI, an outstanding level and so OCD, which is one thing, has two kinds at least. Now we find a beta spindle pattern as well. And you have to remember that Roy John's database only went up to 25 hertz, and a lot of the beta we see is in the upper 20s and sometimes into the 30s. And beta spindling is another kind of failure of an anterior cingulate. And if you have a thalamocortical dysrhythmia, that very fast beta gamma ends up being what you end up seeing, coupled with slow content. Anyway, the OCD isn't just one thing, and it has multiple clusters that respond differentially. The beta pattern the theta pattern just doesn't respond to the SSRI. But they don't have a bad response. It's just a waste of time and money to take it. The beta pattern, on the other hand, has a really negative response to an SSRI. And you can predict that that's going to be a bad response before you even give it to them if you look and see the beta spindles. And the beta spindling isn't just a little bit of beta in the EEG. Spindling excess beta is sinusoidal, large spindling beta. A spindle ramps up and ramps down like an alpha spindle does. And it's simply in the beta frequencies. And quite often upper beta frequencies in the 20s, high 20s, low 30s.
And somebody mentioned that they thought they heard that you said there was no PTSD spike after 9/11 unless they had prior trauma. Why was community response the buffer? Somebody wanted to know, or they misheard.
I don't remember ever having said that. I'm sure I don't remember everything I ever said, but
I'm just
at the
going
same
down the
time,
list here.
I don't think that was one.
All right, here's an easier one. What causes sharp transients? Misfiring neurons, leaky blood vessels, or something else?
So, sharp, slow transients are a specific thing in EEG. It's called a mid-temporal sharp, slow transient. And these are described by Niedermeyer, and they've been studied. Now, they're non-specific, so they're not diagnostic, but then who gives a rat's patootie about being diagnostic? It doesn't predict anything. No predictive validity. So he actually Niedermeyer actually drilled down on over 200 subjects that had mid-temporal sharp slow transients. He found that over 80% of them were vascular, and the vascular ranged from ischemic things like post-traumatic ischemia, migraine ischemia, vascular change with aging causing ischemia, uh, vascular things like aneurysms and arteriovenous malformations, which are much more serious. But 80% of it were basically vascular findings in the brain, and less than 20% were irritative. Which, if you do a 24-hour study or you repeat with sleep deprivation, you actually get an actual discharge, and you can get it diagnosed as somebody with epilepsy or an epileptiform discharge that causes things like migraine. So, you've got a wide variety of non-specific findings that can be associated with mid-temporal sharp flow transients, and they're either vascular, which again, ischemia is a big thing, but you can also have more severe bursty stuff where you have aneurysms and arteriovenous malformations.
The next one up was
What's this? Stump the Gunk here?
uh, no, there was so many questions, and I'm trying to get to the good ones here. Is simple beep feedback more effective than games or Netflix
You're
for
asking
doing training?
what's the result of a race that's never been run? Oh, let's see. What prediction could I make that's valid? I couldn't. Um, one thing more effective than another. That's an empirical question, and you basically have a study that you can do. A lot of people out there getting degrees, they've got to do studies. Once in a while, a student will come and ask me what they should do for their degree study, and I basically say, if you can't look out in the world and see 1,000 things out there that need to be studied, go into accounting. Get out of this field. If you can't see what you should be studying, go into something where you're just playing with numbers. There's the world is full of questions, and you should see lots and lots and lots of them, and find one that tickles your fancy and go ask it.
Mid-beta training makes someone a workaholic, or is that a bad idea?
So, uh,
We had somebody
the,
that said they want to be a workaholic.
the
What could they do?
if you're interested in enhancing your drive mechanism, you need to have a proper arousal to perform. And arousal performance has an inverse U function. If you're under aroused, you're not going to perform well. If you're over aroused, you're not going to perform well. So gain control over your arousal so you can hold a high performance arousal state so that you can perform. The other thing is, if you're motivated, not just your arousal level, but your motivation, and the anterior cingulate, the OCD location, isn't just for OCD. It's also motivation. If it's not working, you can be locked on like OCD, but you can be locked off as well. If it's functioning, it gives you flexibility. If you're locked off, it's amotivation, lack of initiation. So, get your anterior cingulate working properly as well. So fiddle with your arousal level until you can control that. Now, how do you control arousal level? Some of the earliest, oldest standardized protocol work that was done by the Othmers and Lubar was basically SMR and beta. Train SMR until they get drowsy, train beta until they get agitated, and balance them back and forth. Train the arousal performance continuum. That SMR beta back and forth ended up being something that trained people to control their arousal level very nicely. And that can be something that can train that. But you need to also make sure you get your anterior cingulate working properly. In sports people that have difficulty with sleep, people have trained SMR with suppression of beta, and they can sleep, but they then report, well, I kind of lost the get up and go and my drive. So they have to learn to put the beta back and control it. Not to train it just up, but to train it up, down, up, down, up, down, so you can control it. Turn it on when you want it, turn it off when you don't.
Sexual addiction versus OCD. Does sexual addiction look like OCD and EEG, or is it a different frontal lobe issue?
OCD can lock onto almost anything as an addiction. And in our work with addiction, we found 2/3 of the people had overarousal, and they ended up having to have alpha theta training as part of their work. The other 1/3 had anterior cingulate problems, and this is the group that has symptom substitution. I swear I'll never tip another drop. Okay, I'm not going to drink. I'm the dry drunk. I'm gonna my cingulate, instead of locking on to alcohol, I'll find some drug. I'm sorry. I swear off all drugs too now. Well, what else? Oh, internet porn. Oh, gambling. Oh, I mean, it is the most creative thing. It'll find something to assess about, even things you wouldn't imagine. So hoarding. I mean, it'll obsess. There'll be something it'll lock onto. It's very, very creative. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's the anterior cingulate. It's ready to go. And you can bet that it's going to be more creative in finding a new outlet if you don't fix its drive. If you get rid of the drive, the behavior associated with the drive go away. Isn't that what they say in the books? When you read in psychology, you get rid of the drive, the behavior associated with the drive is extinguished. Well, that's exactly how it works. If you get rid of the overarousal drive towards addiction is gone. If you get rid of the anterior cingulate drive, the obsessive compulsive drive for addiction is gone. And they don't also lock onto something else. We showed an N of 30 at the end of 1 year addiction treatment with phenotype-driven protocols. Not, there is efficacy literature that shows alpha theta training. It has an efficacy for people that have addiction. What we found is that 2/3 of them, and if you are effective with 2/3, you're going to be shown to be effective, but what about the other third? So we basically did protocols that were driven by the phenotype. And the people that have an anterior cingulate got a different training than people that had an overarousal that ended up having alpha theta as a major part of their protocol. So they had a 21-point GIA, which is Woodcock-Johnson 3 you can give at the end of 1 year as a 1 year follow-up. We had 100%, all 30 still clean and sober at the end of 1 year. And who the hell believes that statistic, Well, Peniston's stats of 70% were unbelievable, compared to the normal 12-step, honest program might get 30%. Some claim higher, but man, the state hospital that I was at had maybe 10%, 90% recidivism, but that, state hospital isn't like a 12-step program in Malibu, I mean, it's a state hospital, it's not the cream of the crud, it's the crud, so.
Okay, and then somebody want to know, can you do neurofeedback for your dog? Because if Barry Sturman can do cats, can't we do dogs?
In fact, there are people that work with their animals. Stephen Larson and Robin, and I'm afraid that Robin has had some health issues. I don't know how Stephen's doing. I don't get out, so I haven't interacted with him for far too long. But they worked with horses and dogs, and Barry worked with cats. I don't know anybody working with turtles or snakes or anything, but that at the same time, we have an idea that we are like more than or better than these lower animals, and quite honestly, there are some of them I think we should be envious of. Have you ever seen the brain of a freaking dolphin? Holy moly. It makes ours look simple. It's a lot more convoluted. And they can use one half to swim and the other half come sleep. Now, aren't there times you'd like to have, just let one half of your brain go to sleep? Oh, geez, this is a freaking bore here. I'll just take a nap and let the other half attend.
Physically,
dolphins
the
are
dolphin's
extraordinarily better than we are in many respects.
we did a show together regarding dolphins' brains. What is different? How are they different physically,
Uh,
anatomically?
well, if you showed pictures of them, and we did it on the show, you'll see that the convolutions, we've got gyri and sulci. The gyrus is the bump, and the sulcus is the fissure, and and their pattern of gyri and sulci is dense and makes ours look, like I say, kind of rudimentary. Um, uh, um, but then they have built-in sonar and things like what the hell are we? I have trouble hearing anything. I'm deaf as a stump at this point.
What?
So, huh?
Huh?
Yeah, when my audiologist said, you're deaf, I said, what? You know.
And then we got into a lot of CPT tests. Why can OCD phenotypes ace CPT tests even when they actually have attention problems?
Well, it isn't that they have that kind of an attention problem. That uh, uh, don't hit the button when you shouldn't, and hit the button when you should, and have a quick reaction time. What about OCD is going to mess with that? They get perfect scores, but if you look at their ERP, the event related potential, which breaks the response in the ERP into its component parts, you'll find the first part is the sensory arrival. And if that's not right, you have a sensory processing problem, not ADD. The next step is sensory processing. So, boom, something hit you in the eye. Is that a thumbs up or a thumbs down on whether I should respond? Well, something hit me in the eye. I got to figure out what it was. So the what is it, where is it happens, and that's again sensory processing, and that happens more temporally. After that, you either have motor engagement, which is more posterior, or motor inhibition, which is a little later and it's a little further forward. And then after all that is done, your anterior cingulate, where for OCD is going to show itself as not right. Then it says whether you think you did the right thing or not. It holds a model of what you should be doing, and it compares what you just did to what you think you should be doing. In OCD, you get error codes back. You just lock the lock, but MIM it says, "Oh, you better check that." You go and you check the lock again and again and again. You wash your hands again and again. In OCD, the anterior cingulate's giving you error codes. So in the CPT task, you see all of the components of the ERP may look fine, except for the anterior cingulate, the self-monitoring late latency component, checking to see whether what you did matched what you expected. If there's a semantic non sequitur, the first time your English teacher heard, "I can't get no satisfaction," they went crazy. That's a double negative. Your anterior cingulate it's an error. Anyway, the an OCD person has an error detector that's faulty, and it's tripping. Well, it's tripping. So
Okay, why do you sometimes see sharp transients in migraine and ADHD, but not always? What makes them appear in some brains, but not others?
okay, and migraine ischemia. And I mentioned the mid-temporal sharp slow transients are either ischemic or irritative, and migraine is ischemia. Now, you can also have migraine as a symptom if you have epileptiform discharges. So those people respond not to the vascular medication, but to anticonvulsants. And there are a number of people that end up having migraine that end up having an anticonvulsant. Yeah, Topamax is a common anticonvulsant to reduce the excitability of the cortex. And it reduces the excitability enough so that if you have a higher dose, its nickname is Stupid Max. It slows your brain slightly, and if you take more of it, you get slow. So
Is it a problem to do broadband inhibits like 2 through 12 all at once, or is it better to split into delta, theta, alpha separately?
it depends, and again, that's a horse race that hasn't been run really. If you if First of all, not all equipment can do all of the things you might like to do, and you might only have one low and one high inhibit and something in the middle to train, and those software packages are still out there. Others have you can pick lots of inhibits and lots of enhancement bands. And for those, sometimes breaking up a broadband into 2 pieces or 3 pieces so you can differentiate the slowed alpha from the slowing. And sometimes there's a slight phenomenal difference between one and the other. Uh,
Hey, there's our co-host. Where's Sky been?
well, uh, he's about to join us, I think. He's
Okay.
thinking about it. Oh, I'm sitting on a sheepskin and it's got a little fuzz sitting out next to it, and he likes to have just the leather chair there. I just got the
Yeah.
fuzz out of the way. He's very picky. Oh,
He's trying to cool down.
that's 100 pounds of of Ridgeback lapdog, So anyway, he's a joy.
Love to see Sky's EEG.
Uh, you know, we had mentioned a little bit that um, the kind of animal that you are may end up giving you a little bit of a different look to the EEG. And let me.
Here, let me turn you on here.
This is actually at the end of a document. This is the instant electroencephalography, which is kind of a joke. Charlie Joerger, who started the Mayo Clinic's lab in the very early 1930s and then came out and started Langley Porter out in San Francisco. And MD PhD, brilliant man, and one of my mentors. And he taught the neurology residency for uh, uh, medical folks that are going through a neurology residency and becoming neurologists. So this is basically his training manual. This was his first EEG in the early 1930s, a respiratory trace and an EEG trace. But anyway, all sorts of EEG, things, spikes and waves, and teaching them about various kinds of epilepsy and other things. But one of the things you might note early on is that he actually mentioned EEG biofeedback in his neurology residency back in the 1970s. How odd is that?
Mm.
But that's Charlie. I mean, he was ahead of his time. But what I popped this up for is at the end here, this is the background activity of a guinea pig, a cat, a monkey, and a man. And I don't think we should be all that feeling more proud of ourselves than a lot of these animals are. We've got a little bit more frontal lobe to keep us from falling over. We got ballast up front now, and some of us are using it more than others. But I put out a puzzle online many years ago when money was still worth something. Yeah, I offered $100 to anybody who could guess. I listed the man, monkey, cat, and guinea pig, and you have to match up each of them with the trace. And only 2 people tried, and they didn't get it correct. But I was surprised how few people even gave it a shot. I mean, what do you got to lose? You know, uh, of course, I guess politicians sometimes ask you, what do you have to lose? maybe, uh, uh, maybe that's not such a good phrase right now.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, we we basically have the same general kind of background rhythmicity. Now, in a cat, these are actually sleep spindles. This would be the SMR, and it's faster. So somebody might have been able to guess that these are sleep spindles in a cat. A monkey and humans, yeah, six of one, half dozen of the other as to how you could differentiate. A guinea pig has a little bit of a different frequency, but it's again generally got a perceptual alpha in the back of the head. Anyway,
So Jay, why would I take my dog to a neurofeedback practitioner? What would I have them do?
well, first of all, um, I think there's a lot of things you might do with your dog before a neurofeedback might be on the line as
Just
something to
saying,
do.
work with me.
If you know, I have to say though, uh, treating animals is big business. You
Yeah.
get an MRI and they'll do testing on your dog that used to be something you would only have on humans in a major hospital, and you get little doctors off, little vet offices all over the place that have, the fancier technology now. And people will spend a small fortune on their animals. They're family members that we love, and uh, so what does he eat? What do we feed Sky?
Yeah.
Gently dried baby lamb from New Zealand.
And it's cheap. You just get it at Aldi, right?
$150 a bag, I think we could probably buy them cheaper, uh, yeah, the real thing as opposed to gently dried, but nevertheless.
But I mean,
So,
why would,
well,
what,
if your dog is totally panicky, we were invited at
fireworks?
one
Yeah,
point.
fireworks, dogs and fireworks. How about that?
Yeah, that there, that you're going to put some dogs into a panicky terror, and they're going to be tremulous and fight flight, and they can't get away from it. They don't even know where the hell it is or what it is, and fight flight freeze, and they'll just shiver, and sometimes urinate in the house, and sometimes defecate in the house. Fight flight freeze. The parasympathetic is the urinating defecating stuff. So anyway, not all dogs panic. Sky's breed was to hunt lions, and apparently there's no real fear in them. Fireworks and stuff, the big ones that go off, he'll want to go outside and bark at whoever it was, but he doesn't shake and quiver and get afraid of it.
But Jay, I
He's,
think that could be a moneymaker if it worked. I mean, because there's so many pet dog owners that hate Fourth
you
of
know,
July.
that vets are handing out gabapentin for
Right.
nervous dogs. Your dog, if they're chronically anxious, that they give them trazodone. The same kind of psychiatric drugs that they use for people are used for dogs, and obviously they want to make sure that the dose is appropriate to the weight of the dog. I mean, you don't give a little wiener dog the same kind of a dose that a big old guy like me or you might
Yeah.
need,
Right.
So, and
But what would you? How did the sun? We'll stop with this one, Jay. But how did he get the sensors, the cap to stay on a dog? And then what are you like?
you know, you can glue a sensor onto anything. There's collodion, which is a glue. It's ether with protein, and the ether will evaporate off, and it'll be glued on with a protein. And you could glue the electrode on, and then add the gel and scrub the skin, and you've got a glued on electrode, and it won't go anywhere. You got to dissolve it. Now they used to use acetone to dissolve it, but now they've got non-acetone removers, so you don't have to have a evacuation hood to not get your entire ward on the hospital high as a kite, you know.
How would the feedback work with a dog? What would they like? What is the reward? What's the
I don't do that. We were invited at one point to consider doing EEG evaluations on the Queen's horses that they train. You know, they have the very
yeah?
precise gait, and they're very, very rigidly trained. And they spend millions of dollars training these horses. And during the training, some of them just go, F you, and, and won't behave. You know, from that point forward, they won't do that anymore. They'll go this, you know. So when the horse is flipping you off and won't behave anymore, if you can predict that they're going to snap ahead of time. So uh, um, Don Bars showed that there are event-related potentials that can predict explosivity in kids, and they were interested in seeing whether those event-related potentials were able to be seen in horses. And it's just a visual event-related potential, so you can generate a flash VEP on a horse and monitor to see what kind of response there is. But when you get an early response and a large response, the normal event-related potential, you know, visually for you, if we flash a light in front of you, it takes about 100 milliseconds for the flash that hits your eyes to get to the back of your head. And that's a normal conduction time. It takes us time. It goes through the thalamus, the lateral geniculate, says hello, you know, passes along the white matter tracts to the back of your head and arrives casually at about 100 milliseconds. What happens if you've had trauma and you're traumatized? You have anxiety and PTSD. Well, the same flash that hits you in the eye gets to the back of your head early because your amygdala, which is full of a primary emotion, is changing your thalamic gating. And the visual flash is going to arrive in the back of your head early and large. You are jumpy. That, you know, the little stimulus that makes you jump off the floor, you know, that's a jumpy response. And when your amygdala is all charged up with an emotion. So we could predict which person would have explosive behavior based on uh, probably the presence of trauma. Um, and there was the theory that that might be the case with the horses. Now, they were particularly more interested in making sure that we knew that we would never actually meet the royalty, but I was more interested in meeting the horses anyway. So, you know, it doesn't matter to me.
Hey, what are we doing less than a month from now?
You know, there's going to be this party. Oh! You're talking about the meeting.
Yeah, the meeting.
There's going to be this party. It's a meeting. Uh, uh, they're calling it Gunkelman's Island because I had that eye surgery this year, and the theme is an island theme of Gilligan's Island kind of stuff. So, you know, you go to the Sassoon Summit and get laid. They'll have lays to go around you at registration, uh, and the you know the normal tomfoolery and some of the non-normal tomfoolery will be happening, but solid science is going to be going down. Lisa Tatrin is going to be presenting about movement disorders and EG, QEEG, and prediction of medication based on the EG Lewy body meds versus regular Parkinson meds. There's going to be a talk about AI and EEG. We've got a student coming over from Australia to talk about Z-score training and its effect on neurotransmitters. Silvana Markowska-Simoska is coming over from Macedonia, the Academy of Arts and Science, to talk about epileptiform content in autistic kids. Isabella's going to be there talking about the experience of being an intractable epileptic who's now free of seizures and now a tennis pro in Europe. And what was that like going through the training? And being told when you're a young teen that you're going to die in your 20s if you don't have brain surgery. Bedside manner, I don't know where they teach this stuff, but anyway. We've got a whole bunch. Lee Steinberg is going to have a video for us. He was going to be there to do a talk, but he has a conflict, and it's a really, really good conflict. He's being installed in the International Sports Hall of Fame. If you're going to skip the meeting, you better have a good excuse, and he had a damn good excuse. It's not being nominated; he's being installed. So. But we're going to have a really good time. The luau party at the end will be a fundraiser, and there's going to be an auction of various items, including probably the ability to shave this thing off. Goodness knows, all of the auction stuff funds go for students. Any income from the meeting over expenses is set aside for students. We're not in it for like a business trying to make money. I don't get paid a thing for anything at all. In fact, everybody's coming here to my town. I should be paying everybody to come. So it's we take over the yacht club. People who don't want to sit at a table and listen can step into the bar and sit and listen. It's on the big screen in the bar. But we've got classroom style seating for 80, and the banquet will hold 100. We've got a few more people stopping in for the banquet.
And then, Jay, I want to thank you, Dr. Marie, Joshua Moore, Anthony Ramos, all of our guests that we've had on, our viewers and listeners, on helping us getting ranked number 3 neuropsychology podcast by Million Podcasts. That beats a poke in the eye.
We're number 3. We're number 3. We're number 3.
Even Avis yet. We're going to try even harder.
But this is the top million, they got the top 40, and out of the top 40 we're the number 3. So it isn't like we're number 3 is what Avis or something, Yeah, right.
And then for all of our viewers and listeners, where we came up with the content from today, it came from you. We had people that showed up Wednesday night, 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, showing up in the room. The link is in the details below, and just saying, hey, man, I got questions. You got answers. And if our panel can't answer it, I take notes, and then we do the show today, just like we did.
I eat leftovers.
You're doing the good stuff, Jay. Jay, thanks for hanging with me, man.
And when I can, I do show up on Wednesday as well. I mean, but
you're not a busy guy. You don't get to 500,000 EEGs.
I'm a failure, a total freaking failure at retirement. I mean, it's don't do what I do when you retire.
As you say, not as you do.
Yeah. Well, I quit writing reports, but I can't get away from looking at wiggly lines. They still fascinate me. So, yeah.
Well, Jay, have a great weekend. Bye, Sky. Say hi to Regina, and see you in next week, and then in about 3 weeks or so.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in 3D. This 2D stuff is great, Pete, but I know in 3D you're much more impressive.
Here, Jay. Bye.
The NeuroNoodle Podcast is supported by listeners and businesses just like you.